we can ensure decent lives for everyone on the planet. And the concept of producing what you said these movements were for a job guarantee, universal basic services, so many different aspects of life that would make the precarity go away for the average human being. Yet, going back a little bit to what I was saying with the way the government procures, its focus is not on producing universal basic services. It's on producing markets for those capitalists to maximize profit. It's working antithetically to that because it depends on precarity of the working class, living in the worst of conditions, so they're willing to do whatever is pushed onto them. And in this case, it feels strange that we have anyone that understands how economics works that would celebrate or support a system that allows for that. Taking it to the next step, you would also put a tweet out, and I want to blend three things because I think they're all tied tightly together. You'd said something about the problem with universal basic services is that they shouldn't be basic, they should be exceptional. And I walked in a few years back to the unemployment office, and every chair in there had tape on it. The clock was sideways. The windows had tape on them like they'd been broken out. And I think it was intentional to make you feel worthless as you sat there. These are propaganda. These are ways of framing the expectations of society. And I think that if we think about universal basic services as being the crown jewel and making that the focus of how we get past these ecological problems by bringing together the forces of democratic socialism and populist movements and the people themselves and making sure that they're whole. I think that's key. I think you really nailed that. Can you take that further?
Yeah, I think there's something really important in what you said here about the precarity that plagues our society. It's interesting because the dominant discourse out there, this precarity, is almost like a natural phenomenon, as though it's always been with us, as though human beings are just naturally in this condition of constant possible deprivation and immiseration, and only more capitalist growth will ever manage to solve this. And it's a complete lie. In fact, the precarity is intentionally produced and reproduced every day because it can be very easily solved. Again, we have far more than what is necessary in terms of aggregate capacity to ensure decent lives for everybody on the planet. To say nothing of the fact that we could very easily, within the core, because of the extremely high excess levels of productive activity that occurs there. So it's artificially produced. It's produced for a reason, which is basically to ensure that you have a constant flow of cheap labor for private firms to maintain capital accumulation. Because you've got to have some unemployment. You have to have misery. You can't have people having easy access to universal public services because they might walk away from your exploitative jobs or whatever it might be. As long as you keep them in a condition where they need to double down, compete with one another, and work under whatever conditions you give them, you'll be able to maintain this cheap labor force for accumulation, which is necessary for capitalism. Because remember, capitalism is a form of production that requires and depends on perpetually increasing accumulation. And to do that, you have to cheapen labor. And the key mechanism for cheapening labor is to maintain artificial scarcity of employment and also of access to essential goods. That's it. It is artificial. It can be abolished immediately. And to the extent that public services are given, as you point out, they're quite often just absolutely miserable, and that too is intentional. There's literally no reason that public transit in the US has to be such a dismal affair. When you know that other countries, a fraction of the per capita income of the USA, can provide really high quality public transit. It's not difficult to do. It's just that the state is not willing to make those investments, and it requires state investment. Instead, capital goes towards things that are more profitable. I mean, think about it. If investment is focused around what is profitable, you will never get investment in affordable housing or in public transit or in other essential goods that just are by definition not profitable. And somehow we've all been brainwashed into thinking the only form of production that is even worth doing is that which is profitable, which is a complete lie. Because literally every day, government can and regularly do undertake production with no thought to profit whatsoever. That is an ability that any producer has, particularly governments, and yet they routinely don't because they have accepted constraints, artificial constraints, on their ability to control finance and investment.